6. Weekends like this where we get to be together and spend extra time encouraging one another and extra time looking to God's Word are so precious. And it's been a really beautiful and encouraging thing for me to get to be a part of this. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm just really grateful to get to do this. And grateful my family can be here this morning. I feel whole again, and that's nice. And the topics that we've been talking about, these ideas of finding peace in turbulent times and just weathering the storms of life, it's a heavy topic. You know, it's heavy, and yet it's the reality of it and the needfulness of it is ever present. Every moment of our lives, there are varying degrees of trials and tribulations. And what I love about the book of Ecclesiastes is that the wisdom it presents, it's apprehending life under the sun. It's looking at life and saying, well, what can we do? How can we handle this life that we live here on earth? And a lot of the perspectives, in fact, are trying to figure out how to live wisely in the world without kind of God's instruction. And not that God's not a part of this. You're going to see him mention there's things where as he butts up to the end of what's observational, he understands that there is something behind what can be seen, something behind this life under the sun, and God will peek through in this book. And the conclusion, of course, in chapter 12 is what? You remember the last verses in Ecclesiastes? The framer of the book who wrote it, you can see in the beginning and the end, says this is what this all points to. We ought to fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. But in the middle of it, why I love Ecclesiastes, one of the main reasons I love it is because it is relatable. As it looks at life under the sun, it looks at life we live here on earth where we can't peek through. You know, we can't see to the other side, the other planes. We can't see what's going on in the spiritual realms. And Ecclesiastes is speaking to us on that level. What is life like? How do we experience it? What is it like to exist as a human being on planet Earth? And Ecclesiastes, although it was written thousands of years ago, it shows us that life has always been the same for us. And you can see it in questions like this. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 6. Pick up in verse 7. Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 7. All a man's labor is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage does the wise man have over the fool? What advantage does the poor man have, knowing how to walk before the living? What the eyes see is better than what the soul desires. This too is futility and striving after the wind. Whatever exists has already been named, and it is known what man is, for he cannot dispute with him who is stronger than he is. For there are many words which increase futility. What then is advantage to a man? For who knows what is good for a man during his lifetime? During the few years of his futile life, he will spend them like a shadow. For who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? You see all the things that we've already briefly introduced, like this life under the sun, the futility, the vanity of it, the fleeting kind of nature of life. But one of the things that sticks out to me, look at verse 8, Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 8. What's the question he asks there? You see it? Look at your Bibles. What question does the preacher ask in Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 8? What advantage does what particularly here? Isn't this a book of wisdom? How could a book of wisdom ask us, hey, is there really any advantage to being wise? I mean, that's pretty startling, isn't it? I mean, if the answer is, it seems like a rhetorical question leading to the fact that the answer is no, there's no advantage to being wise. And if that's the answer, well, let's close the book and end the class, because I guess there's no point in studying the wisdom, right? What's his point? I mean, think about this. Why might a book of wisdom say, what advantage is there to the wise man over the fool? Why does he say this?
There's no advantage. Knowledge and wisdom do not overcome sin.
Okay.
And if the poor and the wise sin, they will both work.
Yeah, so I like that point, Roy, that maybe the significance is that wisdom and knowledge have no kind of, they can't hold a candle to the power of sin and death, right? There's a true, I think that's right. I saw a hand over here as well. Go ahead. Sure. Yeah, so there is a point here where he is trying to wake us up, right? Trying to shake us awake and make us realize that there's something here that we need to think about and consider. Any other thoughts about that? Go ahead, Glory.
Compared to eternity, we're only here on this earth for just a
Yep.
split second, and
Yeah, that's a lot of what Ecclesiastes is written in context of is the fact that we're all going to die. That's actually a huge part of the chapter 7. The answer to this question is we have to look to the fact that we're all going to die. And in light of all of our death and how we don't know when that's going to happen, wisdom its place starts to change a little bit, right? Sometimes we think if we can read all the right self-help books and we can get all the best wisdom, that I can kind of carve out a life that's going to be really, really significant. And like Ecclesiastes will say a couple chapters later, time and chance happen to us all. And even if it doesn't, we're all going to die. And so as good as our life may be, what can we take with us, right? And that's kind of the material plane that Ecclesiastes is working on. One more comment, Paul. I saw your hand in.
I think it's good to define what kind of wisdom we're talking about. Because fleshly wisdom will not help us get to heaven, but
Yeah.
godly wisdom
Yeah.
that he gives us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is what is interesting is in the context of Ecclesiastes, he's kind of trying to figure out what it feels like and feeling out the boundaries and the edges and limitations of human thought and what can really change our life, right? And to your point, I think what the conclusion of the book points to is that you can live as wise as you can, and Roy made this point already too. And to your point, like no matter how wise you are, if it doesn't lead you to understanding and appreciating that we have to trust in God's saving grace, then we're done for. All right, one more comment, Matthew, and then we'll move on.
Even with all the wisdom, we're all still sinners, and we're all short.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. So sin is one of the big problems we have to tackle with this, right? All right, so let's get into chapter 7, because this question, I want to keep these questions in our mind. What advantage does a wise man have over the fool? What advantage does a poor man have? And then there's another question. What then, in verse 11, he says it again, chapter 6:11. What then is the advantage to a man? Who knows what is good for a man during his lifetime, during the few years of his futile life? Who knows what is good? This word for good is going to come up a lot in chapter 7, so pay attention. I'm going to read chapter 7, verses 1 through 14. Actually, let's just start with verses 1 through 6. They'll be on the PowerPoint for us. Let's do Ecclesiastes 7, 1 through 6. And we're starting to get into the first big section on the outline. This is where they'll be covering these verses. Ecclesiastes 7, verses 1 through 6. A good name is better than a good ointment, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting, because that is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be happy. The mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. It is better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man than for one to listen to the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool, and this too is futility. Look at this. A good name, a good ointment, it's better. What is the question asked in chapter 6 about what is good for a man under the sun? Chapter 7 switches. You notice the switch in kind of how it's written? In chapter 6, there's kind of it's more prose. It's written out in sentences and questions and paragraphs. And then chapter 7, the writing style changes. Do you notice that? What does chapter 7 remind you of? Any other book of the Bible that comes to mind? Feels like Proverbs, right? And it's just 14 verses of Proverbs kind of inserted into the middle of Ecclesiastes. It's a very interesting section of this book. That's why I wanted to talk about it, is because it's a kind of peculiar section in this book. And so you have to kind of take these all together, but I think what he starts to enter into with these proverbial kind of writings in chapter 7 is he's answering this question: what is good for a man? What's good for a person in this life? If we're going to talk about wisdom, what is good? Because the point he brings up in chapter 6, that's what we're talking about this weekend. Life is short and full of difficulty. It's painful. And so how can you get up, preacher? How can you get up, and the preacher of Ecclesiastes, and tell me this wisdom when my life is going so horribly? What is really good or better for me? That's a fair question. And so as he starts to talk about it, that's what he's covering in this chapter. A good name is better than a good ointment. It's better. He's going to start telling us what's good and what's better, some approaches from wisdom to how to handle the difficulty of life. And this first statement is kind of like, it's easy wisdom, right? A good name is better than a good ointment. I don't think we use the word ointment much anymore. The idea is something that makes you look and smell good, right? It makes your kind of physical appearance and kind of experience of your, better. Deodorant or, lotion, things like this. And it's like, well, we can understand that what's on the inside, like my reputation and my heart, that's better than looking and smelling good, right? We get that. Okay, that's easy wisdom. But he's actually lulling us into a false sense of security with this first line, isn't he? He says, hey, a good name's better than good ointment. We're like, yeah, preach on, preacher, we get that, amen. And then he says, and, by the way, in parallel to that, the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. Whew. He rope-a-doped us, right? Like, we're like, oh, we think we understand, then bam! He's like, hey, actually, the day you die is better than the day you're born. Oh, okay, let's stop. I don't agree with that. That's startling, isn't it? What do you think he means by this? How can he write this and say the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth? Do you agree with this? Nate, go ahead. Hmm. Okay. Sure. So like maybe the day of one's death, you're saying is like you have your whole life is remembered and all the things that were accomplished and everything's written by the time you die, right? And there's an understanding with it possibly. Everything's potential when you're a baby. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, the struggles of life are
Yeah. Yeah.
and we've been faithful to be in peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we're born, hey, the struggles are just starting.
Yeah. We come out crying, right?
We may not know what they are, but there's a lot of struggling for a newborn.
For sure. For sure. No, I mean, newborns, it seems like their life is struggle. Even though the struggles to us seem small, to them, they don't know if they're going to get the next, like, that's why they cry. Like, you've seen a newborn cry? They act as if their life is ending in that moment. I remember my daughter was born, there was like first few weeks, I was like, she is crying as if we're horrible to her, but it's just because she's hungry, you know? But that's what she's supposed to do. She doesn't know any better, right? Babies are made to do that. Good, I like that. Go ahead.
When we're born into death
Hmm.
because we're born into sin.
Okay.
And if we have followed after God, and in our case, accepted Christ for the redemption that He gave us, death is a glorious thing.
Yeah.
Because we're going.
Sure. Yeah, so I think you're right. We're born, I think a lot of what Ecclesiastes is handling is the fact that this sinful world is so broken, and the second you enter it, it's painful, it's difficult, it's challenging, and death is an alleviation from this, right? And so I think as we start to think about this it's meant to be shocking, right? As much as a good name is better than good ointment, that's how much better the day of one's death is than the day of one's birth. And he starts to explain this as he goes on, right? It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. This is the same idea. We don't believe this. I mean, you guys probably had a memorial recently, right? I mean, these things are hard and they're heavy, but they're significant and they're important. They're meaningful and they're better. You know, and he says, because that's the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart, right? This is the idea that if you want to be wise, if you want to live a good and better life, the actual kind of way of it is to understand that this is the end of every man, and the living takes it to heart. If you want to understand how to live your life better, you have to apprehend, you have to appreciate, you have to grab onto where your life is heading. We don't like to talk about death. We don't like to think about death. Our culture particularly is so separated and kind of sanitized from death. We don't grow up on farms anymore. We don't shoot the pig. We want to have bacon. You know, like we're not engaged with that. I'm not trying to be crass with this, but there are generations who grew up when they wanted to eat, they killed something. And they understood the cost of life. And if you've never done that, you know, it's like you're separated from it. You know, we like to eat the meat, but we don't want to be engaged with the process to get it. And this is why it can't be good to have pets or anything like this. It's good for us to understand that life is short, right? It's good for us to apprehend this because grasping death, this is the first point, leads to appreciating the value of living. This is kind of the kind of bittersweet beauty of the sinful world we live in, is that as painful as it is, it reminds us that even living is in this sinful world there's something about the value of it in context of how short and how it's going to end one day. And so he starts to get into this and starts to talk about the mind of the wise versus the mind of fools. And I think this point is going to help us to see that there is, through this, even with the things we cannot change about life and death, the difficulty of our lives, there is a mindset that is greater than our circumstances, right? The mind of fools versus the mind of the wise. What's the difference in verse 4? What's the difference between the mind of the wise and the mind of the fools? Look, the mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of the fools is in the house of pleasure. This starts to hit us where we live, right? How much do we seek pleasure in our lives? How much do we seek to even drown out any sad or difficult thought with any kind of pleasure? Some of it's sinful, some of it not. There's things that aren't sinful that are pleasing to us. And we might just fill our lives with distractions. Fill our minds with news, or fill our minds with social media, or fill our minds with TV or movies, or fill our minds with all sorts of things, right? There's all different levels to this. But the mind, and he also goes on to say, sorrow is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, the heart may be happy. This doesn't make sense to us either, right? There's actually a truth that being sad is not just okay, but it's good for us. Through sorrow, through kind of leaning into the times that are sad and understanding what sadness is, we actually can have a truer sense of joy, right? Does that make sense to us? I think I don't know, for some reason in mind, this quote is associated with Winnie the Pooh, so I don't know if that's right or not. But how he talks about how great it is to have friends that you're sad to leave. That makes goodbyes so hard. Don't we get that? When there's people, there's long goodbyes, there's mournful goodbyes, that's a special thing. And if we didn't cry about it, if we weren't sorrowful about it, then the relationship wouldn't have the meaning that it's supposed to have. Because we're just like, oh, all right, well, see you later. That's it, Well, don't love that person very much, right? We understand in some context that sorrow is meaningful. We can't just avoid sadness and pain because it would mean that we don't have anything significant. We don't have anybody worth missing, that when we're apart from them, it doesn't feel right. We don't feel like ourselves. We don't feel whole. Sorrow is better, right? And so mindset through this is an issue of wisdom and folly, not circumstance. As we start to think about how we deal with pain and difficulty, there is a value inherent to sorrow and pain. And so this is why he'll say stuff like, it's better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man than for one to listen to the song of fools. A mentor of mine, a preacher, whenever he's in the car, he would either sit in silence and meditate, or he would listen to sermons. Not his own sermons, of course, because that would be a little crazy. But he would listen to sermons, and he quoted this verse to me. And I'm not saying this is the only way to interpret this verse, but the point is well made, What do you listen to? When you're in the car by yourself, it's not wrong to listen to music, but what are the lyrics saying? What are they pointing you towards? I'm not saying this is a matter of right and wrong, but it is a matter of wisdom and folly, right? What goes into your mind is going to challenge you. If you're listening to things that challenge you to make you a better person, to be wise, it's going to be better for you than for the song of fools, right? And this has some kind of Hebrew pun in it, where it's like the idea of thorns under a pot. It kind of sounds like the burning of nettles under kettles is just like the laughter of fools. That might be kind of what it's like in the Hebrew. The burning of nettles under kettles. Because thorn bushes, when you burn them, we get this, right? Just kind of lights up and then it burns out. Might make good kindling, but it doesn't make a good fire, right? If you try to make a whole fire to keep yourself warm, to cook some food with thorn bushes, you're going to be hard pressed, right? And that's why he says this too is fleeting. It's passing by, this laughter of fools. And maybe it's the laughter of fools at wise people, right? Saying, you're so foolish, just enjoy life. Hey, what's the big deal? Why are you so glum? Just have a good time. Go to the house of pleasure. Let's have some fun. Let's laugh it up. It's a good time. That's going to pass. And so distracting yourself with trivialities will burn your attention and make you no warmer. I think this is part of this. As we sort of think about all the ways, things we turn to, all the ways we look to for what's good and better, how can I have a nice life here on earth? These ideas of distraction or kind of pleasure and enjoying life, he's not going to say never enjoy life. But the point of this context is that if we want to live a good and better life, it's about these kind of verbs, right? Go to these places. Take this to heart. Be sad and have your mind in these places. Listen to these things. We'll talk more about this in the sermon hour later. But this idea of where our mind dwells and the things that we listen to and think about, these are choices. And so often when life gets hard, we think we have no choice. We can really get self-pitying and victimize ourselves, right? Well, it's like, well, life's just so hard. Preacher, you don't understand. My life's hard. And that's true. I don't understand how hard your life is. That's a difficulty with sympathy and empathy, right? But one of the mistakes that people often make is that we believe there's no choice in the difficulty we're in. We start to pity ourselves, or to feel bad for ourselves. We start to think, you should feel bad for me too. And there's nothing better about that. There's nothing good about that. To use the words of Ecclesiastes 7, And really, the idea is maturity is found by looking at the eyes of this passing world unflinchingly. Okay, this is what I mean. These 6 verses are saying, hey, you should go to funerals. You should go to the house of mourning. You should spend time thinking about where your life is heading, because that will actually lead you to enjoy and apprehend and appreciate what actually matters. You're not going to be living in this passing kind of pleasures and foolish ideas because they feel good in the moment. Those things are fine sometimes if they're not sinful. But to live a whole life just for kind of like passing things, you look back and, 32 years of your life have gone by, and you're like, what was I doing? You're 32 years closer to your death, but you didn't think that as you were going through it. And so there's as you start to think about this is for the good and better life. And I know I'm bouncing between class participation and preaching at you, so I appreciate this. I wanted to make sure to get to these points in the middle section of the outline. There's 4 lessons in the middle of this section of Ecclesiastes 7. There's like 4, I think, ideas from wisdom about pitfalls, places where we make mistakes. It's going to be verses 7 through 10 of Ecclesiastes 7. Let's read these together. He says, "For oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit better than haughtiness of spirit. Do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. Do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask about this." All right, 4 verses, and I think 4 kind of classic or easily made mistakes through trying to live a good and better life through difficult times. I think there's 4 responses that we often have. First of all, this idea, oppression makes a wise man mad and a bribe corrupts the heart. I think the idea here is that there is coercion, there are pressures kind of making you, forcing you, or even the wise have these pressures upon them to capitulate, to give in, to make not as wise decisions, right? The wisest of people, even in our country, can be affected by money, right? Well, hey, here's a little thing to sweeten the pot. If you could just vote this way, I'm not trying to get political. I'm saying we understand this in some levels of our society, right? But take it down to you. You're a follower of Christ. You might consider yourself pretty wise. Are there ever shortcuts or pressures? Is there ever oppression where there's pain pushing on you and you think, well, if I just did this, my life would be easy. If I just didn't hold this standard, life would feel easier in this moment, right? You understand what he's saying? Oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. There are these, in moments where life actually feels so painful and difficult and brutal, there is these escapes that we think, well, if I just took this easy way out, if I just took this bribe, if I just could avoid this oppression. And I think the way I put this is don't mortgage your soul, right? It's like the idea where it's like, hey, if I could just, we lose the picture of the long game for the short game in the moment. What he's saying, there's all these times where even the wisest of people give in to the worst kind of desires, and the end result is worse. I mean, to use the example of lawmaking in our country, do you think lobbyists have helped us have better laws in this country? I'm not trying to get political. I don't mean to, but I'm just saying when money starts getting involved with decisions made for the good of people, as in people benefit from certain decisions, from money getting paid to them, we start to understand, right? That bribery, greasing of palms and all these things doesn't lead to people's betterment. It leads to the betterment of the person getting the money, but often the money has to be given because it's not for everyone else's good. We see it in other people, but when we start to make those deals for ourselves and mortgage our own souls, we don't see it as clearly. And so one of the classic mistakes, one of the easy mistakes to make in difficult times is to kind of give in to oppression, to find the easy way out, to find something that can kind of sweeten the pot now, even though it will sell my soul for some money now. So don't mortgage your own soul. And then secondly, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than haughtiness of spirit. Isn't this also one of the classic things we want to do? When things get hard, we have all these plans, and we're working on the plan. It's kind of day by day. And then life happens, and we're like, well, there goes the plan. Let's just find a different way. Let's give up on it, right? Let's try and take the shortcuts. All these are different kind of shortcuts that we want to take. But what he's saying is in the difficult kind of messy middle of life that we have to keep in mind that the end of a matter is better than its beginning. This gets back to the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth, right? That what we lose sight of in the difficult kind of middle place. Making plans is really exciting, right? It's like, oh, this is going to be this one day. And you have all the pictures and the kind of architectural blueprints of how your life's going to be. Like, man, that's so awesome. And then you start building, and you're like, I don't know about this. I didn't realize laying concrete and placing foundations, and Dick, you built this building. The plans are great, and you start getting to the building process, and it's like it's exciting, but it's also takes a long time, right? And sometimes we're in the process of building, we just lose sight of the end of the matter. Obviously, not with this building. That turned out great, but sometimes in our lives, right? In this analogy, and so part of this is don't short your own future. This is a little phrase to help make them memorable for us, right? And when life gets hard, right, we can start to look for, a little money here, a little money there. We can start to try to avoid the oppression. We can start to also look for how to give up. We start to give up, right? It's easy for me once the plan gets altered to just give up on the plan. But the idea here is that the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than haughtiness of spirit. Don't mortgage your soul. Don't short your own future. And the next one is don't be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. You know what anger is? There's maybe a place for anger in a sense where there are sins, unrighteousness, that we ought to feel like Jesus would feel wrath towards the Pharisees and some of their actions. But generally, if anger is residing in your heart, that wasn't how Jesus did it. It wasn't always in his heart, right? If anger is residing in your heart, that's a foolish place to be. And anger to me is weaponized weakness. I've realized a lot in my life that when I'm angry, I'm either sad about something or I just feel powerless, and so the anger comes in to make me feel strong. You notice this maybe in a discussion with a loved one in a close relationship, and the decisions aren't going the way you want them to, and you start to just get angry because you realize you're powerless to change what really is going on. I think a lot of times we're powerless to change things. And so especially when you start thinking about your life in general and life is getting difficult, you start to feel weak and realize how little control we have over how things go. And instead of just responding with serenity and acceptance, we start to kind of puff up and get angry and think, well, if I can just shout about this, then people will change for me. I mean, think about road rage, right? Go ahead, Glory.
I try to remember that anger does more damage to the vessel that it's contained in than it does to the person or thing that it's directed at.
Yes.
Plus, it's one letter away from danger.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Anger is one letter away from danger. That'll preach. I like that. Yeah, and it does. It does more damage to the vessel that it's in than the object, right, that it's pointed at. And these are like, listen, all these things, whether it's bribes and oppression, maybe that doesn't strike you in where you're at, but, maybe it also could be losing patience. I can get impatient. Maybe for you it's anger. When things get tough, you get angry, right? The preacher is saying these kind of easy solutions to difficult times that kind of humans tend towards, they will not help you. They won't help you or anybody else. And the fourth one, and we can talk about all of them after this one, and maybe discuss it briefly, but don't say, why is it that the former days were better than these? And he just simply says, it's not from wisdom that you ask about this. When you're focused on the past, you're not helping anybody. You're certainly not helping yourself. Sometimes I get kind of perturbed when older generations will talk about my generation being like so much worse than theirs. And generally, it's because what I remember is that the generation telling me that was the Woodstock generation. And I'm like, have some perspective. I'm not saying we're good, but we're not any worse. I mean, look in the past decades. I know things seem tough right now. And sometimes if you live for a long time, you say, well, when I was your age, it was this way. But oftentimes when we look back with nostalgia, we're forgetting. We have rose-colored glasses. We're forgetting how bad things actually were. And maybe if things really were great for you back then, we're also not appreciating it wasn't so great for whoever down the road, right? You think about times in the past. You can look back to times in earlier days, and you can say, well, things are better for me back then. Well, it's like, well, some people are like, hey, that was a hard time for me and my people back then, And we start to lose sight of these things. It's very self-centered, and also it doesn't help the present. And so the fourth thing is don't delude yourself with nostalgia. It's a delusion. Oh, things were better back then. They probably weren't. And even if they were better for you, they definitely weren't better for someone else. And so who are we helping with nostalgia? Go ahead, Joe. You had an idea?
Yeah, one of the big things about this in particular is I think that the reason why things seem so bad today is because we have information at our fingertips.
Sure.
And back then, there's chaos going on around the world.
Yeah.
That didn't get told about because of we
Shit.
didn't have the news.
Didn't reach your ears. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it. I'm going to talk about that some in the sermon hour as well, just where our minds dwell. Like this 24-hour news cycle is not serving us. I think it's a good point. Go ahead. What's your name again? I'm so sorry. Brian. Okay.
So I look at it this way. When I was a child, I was ignorant of some of the realities that were around me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much more pleasant and easy to live.
Yes.
As I've grown and gotten older, I can look back on those moments with fond memories because now I am more aware of what's happening around me,
Mm-hmm.
even though that stuff was also happening back then. I just wasn't aware.
Yeah.
And so now it looks worse to me than it did then.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on, right? That it's not wise to look back in nostalgia because now you know more than you did then. And there's so many things, both you and Joe, the comments are going well together, where it just doesn't actually, it's not actually better. It just feels better. And that's a deceitful kind of thought process.
Point of ignorance versus a point of
Understanding, yes. Yes, yeah, good. Matthew?
This thought just popped into my head, and I'm gonna live with it from now on, and I wanna share it. This turbulence that we've been talking about is training.
Hmm.
It's like you join the military,
Yeah.
you go to boot camp. Your life's gonna feel like a wreck for 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's training.
Yeah.
Training for your future mission.
Yep.
So this turbulence is training us for future missions. Additionally, this turbulence, there are many different types of incidents that we consider as our turbulence.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them. When you go through that turbulence and you get to the other side, it's like that scripture, the end of everything is better than its beginning.
Yes.
Throw turbulence in that.
Yeah.
And then that turbulent incident, you learn from it, and you may never have to go through it again, but if you do,
You're ready.
you're right.
Equipped, yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's some of the stuff I think that goes along with so much of the stuff that Daniel talked about and we talked about yesterday too. The suffering, the gift of suffering, right? That it's granted to us, and he's testing us and he's forming us. I think that's right on, Matthew. I think it's really well said. So think about these 4 classic mistakes. I want you to think about for a second, is kind of like the short-term gain of bribery a temptation for you when things aren't going well? Like, if I just have a little more, if things were just a little, if I had a little more kind of cushion monetarily. Is impatience a temptation for you when things go hard? This plan's too tough. I got to give up on this, right? We just can't see this through. Is anger a temptation for you when things aren't going your way? I think that one's really common. I think the worst things have gotten kind of more tense politically and culturally in this world. I've seen a lot of tempers be flaring, and not just among worldly people. I've seen them among Christians, right? Anger is a temptation when things aren't going right. Or is nostalgia a temptation for you? Well, things were just like they were when I was a kid. None of this would be happening, If we just had the politicians or the leaders or the people from my childhood, things would be better, right? I just want you to think about these 4 temptations through difficulty. I think that's what the preacher is equipping us with. Hey, don't make these common mistakes. They're not wisdom. And they won't make your life better. Nostalgia doesn't make your life better. Anger, impatience, bribery, none of these things make your life better. They will only make your life worse. Go ahead, Glory.
We also have to remember that even during the days of Woodstock and what's going on today, that there are those who do not bow their knee.
Yes. Yes.
Just like, is it Elisha or Elijah? I can't remember.
Yeah, Elijah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was told by God that there are 8,000 that have not bowed the knee.
Yes, well said. And me pointing out that is not saying that they were worse than my generation either. I'm not trying to fight fire with fire. I'm just trying to remind us that all our generations are bespeckled, right? It's not just pure one or the other. And it's all kind of evens out, I think. That's what Ecclesiastes says. There's nothing new. No generation's like, this was the perfect one. We call them the greatest generation, and I understand why. I'm not trying to detract. But there were problems then too, Sarah? That's true, yeah. There are some generations that were extraordinarily bad. And in part of that, imagine if wickedness could live on for hundreds and hundreds of years, Think about how much it could multiply. Good. Let's get to this last section for the last 10 minutes of class. This is, to me, the solution. This is the point. Okay, look at verses 11 through 14 of Ecclesiastes 7. He says, wisdom is, along with an inheritance, is good and an advantage to those who see the sun. For wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its possessors. Consider the work of God. For who is able to straighten what he has bent? In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other so that man will not discover anything that will be after him. This is good stuff. Ecclesiastes 7:14 is one of my favorite verses. Just so helpful. We'll get there in a second. All right. Wisdom along with an inheritance is good. I mean, who would disagree with this, right? If you have inheritance in the Jewish mindset, would have been not really money as much as it would have been land, right? The inheritance of the Jewish people was the promised land, an inheritance from God and from their forefathers. Think about that. So it meant stability. It meant life. This idea, if you have wisdom and inheritance, what else could you ask for? And we got the land, we got livestock, we got everything's going for us, right? And then he goes on to, wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. We understand this, right? If you have a nest egg, if you have an emergency fund, there is a certain security that comes from it. But wisdom is even better than money, right? There's an advantage to knowledge that is even greater than money. We understand, he's using money here as something we can understand inherently. When you have investments and money and kind of a currency, it's that we understand the power and the security of that. Wisdom is just as good and even a little better than money. But you notice in the middle he hides this kind of barb. Wisdom and money are great. They're good protection, but we skipped over a line, didn't we? They're an advantage to those who what? Those who see the sun. You can't take wisdom and you can't take money with you. You understand this? There's something in here that what this points to is advantage. Wisdom is an advantage to you only while you're living. You know what we like to do? Hey, don't get angry. Okay, yeah, I'll work on that someday. Don't accept bribes. Yeah, I just need this right now, but when I'm later, I won't do that. Hey, don't be impatient. Well, I'm impatiently waiting for when I'm going to be patient, all right? That's what I'm handling. That's my patience. Don't be nostalgic. Well, hey, whatever the warning is, we just say, well, maybe later. And his point here is it's only advantageous to you when you're living. And the whole point of Ecclesiastes has been, well, you don't know how long you're going to live for. So you better listen up, right? Listen up. Wisdom pays no dividends in the grave. That's part of this, right? Wisdom and money are protection and advantage to you only while you're alive. And so you better listen up. You better take these to heart now. This reminds us of Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount. I haven't looked at a lot of other verses, but these ones just are so salient to this, right? Do you ever notice at the end of Jesus' sermon, everyone loves the sermon. It's beautiful. They're impressed by his teaching. And then he ends it by saying the song we sing to kids, right? You know this song, kids. The wise man built his house upon the rock. Right? You know that song? You guys perked up? Good. Yeah, Joanna loves that song. She has to sing it. Rock song. That's her rock music, is the wise man, the foolish man. But you ever notice that the flood comes on both the wise and the fool? That's not right. And this whole weekend, we like to think that if I could have the right sermons and the right wisdom, then the storms won't come to my front door. I'm sorry, that's not how God tells us. That's not the good news. The good news isn't that your life's going to be a cakewalk in Christ. The good news is that when the rain comes and the floods come, your house won't fall. That's the good news. But you still have to endure the storm. But what's the difference between the wise man and the foolish man in Matthew 7? Everyone hears. Everyone in this room hears the words of the wise preacher. Everyone now is hearing the words of Christ. What's the difference between the wise and the fool? The one who does it, right? The one who engages with it. Anita? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, taking responsibility, going to the house of mourning, understanding what life's about, right? And owning it. Yes, that's good. That's well said. And so as you get back to this, he says, consider the work of God. Consider the work of God. Who can straighten what he has bent? Have you thought about this? Life what he's talking about, all this context has been about circumstances that we cannot change. And he's talking to people going through hard times, going through a difficult life. And he's saying, look, consider God's work. There is so much about your life you cannot change. You ever thought about that? We would do well to think about the things we cannot change a little more. This is where stuff like the Serenity Prayer, often talk about 12-step groups, comes up, right? I always reference it, and I always forget exactly how it goes. Give me Yeah, it's okay. I'm the same way as you, Joe. I can't think of it. It's like understanding what I cannot change and the power to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Yeah. Yes, there you go. And so these ideas come to this, right? Where it's better, consider the work of God. Who can straighten what he has bent? And what he's talking about specifically here is that there are good days and there are bad days. There are prosperous days and there are adverse days, and you can't change that. No matter how wise, no matter how holy or faithful you are, you can't change the fact that good days and bad days are coming your way. You can't unbend what he has bent. And God's made it this way for a reason. What the preacher says kind of mysteriously, so that man will not know what is to come after him. You know what God has designed this world to where the only way to really make it through is by faith. He's designed it that way. And so if you aren't a Christian, or if you are a Christian, but you find yourself in a place where life just doesn't make sense and you can't see what's coming down the pipes, guess what? God's designed it that way because he doesn't want us to depend on ourselves. He's designed it so we must depend upon him. And so this is the goal of God as he does. So comprehending what is beyond your power and what lies within your control is the first step to peace. You want to have peace through the turbulence? You want to have peace through the storms? Then learn what you can and cannot control. And accept, right? Suffering, or maybe it's pain. You can kind of interchange it, but suffering is pain plus resistance. We can't change the pain that comes, but you can change how much you resist it. And we taking responsibility, like Anita said, or just understanding what I can and cannot control. This will help us work through this. And then think about this. There are days like this, and there are days like that. There are days of prosperity, there are days of adversity. What's the encouragement for prosperous days? What did he say? If you have a good day, what should you do with it? Enjoy it. How many of us are waiting for the other shoe to drop when a good day comes? How many of us, God grants us, the sun comes up, we wake up on the right side of the bed, everything's going our way, and some devilish voice in the back of our head says, yeah, do you deserve this day though? Yeah, but what's going to happen after noon? Yeah, but what if this happens? And you have this anxious kind of voice. Well, all these kind of devilish whisperings. And no, silence those. When a good day comes, the wise thing to do is enjoy it. Thank God for it. This is a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, like Bob read for us in Psalm 118. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, attitude of gratitude. I love that. But in the day of adversity, what's the purpose of that? Do we just ho-hum glum and say, well, I guess I'll just wait till tomorrow, wait till a prosperous day comes? What's the point of an adverse day? What does the verse say? God's made both of these. And that's kind of what we're supposed to consider. Consider that God gives good days and bad days. That's been the thematic lesson from this weekend. That's what you were saying, Matthew, right? It's like boot camp. God gives good times and he gives bad times. Blessed be the name of the Lord, as Job would say, right? When naked came I into this world, naked will I leave. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. And again, all this so that we don't discover what comes after us. Go ahead.
I'm just going to read James 1, verse 2. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. But if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him.
Yes. Well said. Yeah. Good. That's a great cross-reference for this. And so today is a good day. And I say this to a room of people, I have no idea what your lives are like. Okay? The point of this being a good day is not that it's the best day of your life and it's super prosperous and you're happy. The point of all this chapter of Ecclesiastes 7 is that if you know where your life is heading and you know what is good and can be better, then you can understand that this day has a purpose for you, that God has a purpose for you in this day. Maybe it's an adverse day where nothing's going right, the preacher's preaching too long and you're tired, right? Maybe that's your day today. And if so, the wisdom from God is to consider that life is full of this. Under this broken world, life under the sun is full of difficult times, and God has made it thus for you to understand and appreciate your dependence upon him. Conversely, if it's a good day, then God has made life to be enjoyed. And sometimes Christians were the worst at just enjoying good times. And there is a beauty in what God has given in a good day to just and simply enjoy it, to praise him, to have an attitude of gratitude, like you said, to thank him and say, this is a good day, and I'm going to live in it. To look at whatever is making your day good, whether it's a relationship or just whatever you're appreciating, just look at it and say, this is beautiful. Thank you. This is the wisdom. And I know this is such a simple, it can almost sound trite idea, but the wisdom of Ecclesiastes, the best wisdom from it is, and through good days and bad, understand what makes, or through prosperous days and adverse days, understand the good use of them for your well-being, for your better life. I want to end on John 7 if it was going to be a sermon, but this idea, all the wisdom of Ecclesiastes leaves us still wanting more. And I'll plant this seed for what's going to be the sermon later. But this wisdom of Ecclesiastes is good and it's helpful, but it's not enough. And Jesus, the gospel of Jesus Christ, fills in the gaps. No matter, using good days and bad days for what they're meant for is fine, but it still leaves us with a greater longing, doesn't it? And in John 7, Jesus gets up and he says this, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. But this he spoke of the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were to receive, for the Spirit was not yet given because Jesus was not yet glorified. Here's the offer. There's something greater and better even than having good days and bad days and knowing how to use them, how to have peace through turbulent times. That's great. But like we talked about yesterday, the real blessing is having a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's what we'll point to as we get to the sermon hour and later. But I appreciate all your good comments. I appreciate the participation in class. And I love this section of Ecclesiastes. I hope you guys love it a little more too after this class. So class dismissed. I appreciate your good participation.